So let us wind up today PGBP. In the last lecture, I have discussed one full-fledged numerical where the assessee was preparing the P&L account on the basis of accrual system of accounting or mercantile basis. Mercantile or accrual basis is what? When you record the income, when these have become accrued, whether received or not, and when you record the expenses, when these have become due, whether actually paid or not. So if nothing is mentioned in the P&L account, normally it is assumed that accrual basis of accounting is being followed. If someone follows cash system of accounting where income will be recorded when actually received, whether accrued or not doesn't matter. And similarly, expenses will be recorded when it is actually paid, whether due or not doesn't matter. So cash system of accounting is exceptional. If someone is following cash system of accounting, that examiner will tell you that in this case the assessee is following is has been following cash basis of accounting for the past so many years, etc., etc. But what I mean to say is that in PGBP, it is assessee's choice to prepare the books of account as per any method, whether cash system or mercantile system. If nothing is mentioned, and if prima facie it doesn't look that cash system is being followed, then we have to assume that accrual basis of accounting is being followed by the assessee. Is it clear? If yes, please raise your hands. Now, so in the last lecture, I have discussed with you one numerical where the assessee was following the accrual basis of accounting. And in today's lecture, let me discuss one full-fledged numerical where the assessee is following cash system of accounting. So now I want to tell you that when someone is following cash system of accounting, how do we compute PGBP? Now it is not different. It is also very easy if you remember the concepts of PGBP. Let me first share one full-fledged question from my book. You can take the screenshot and then I will start solving that numerical. Yeah, wait a second. Take the screenshot of this page. I think it is clearly visible. Please take the screenshot of this page. And after taking the screenshot, please raise your hands. So I think I should start solving this case. Now, let us see this case. Why 48 years a tax consultant who maintains books of account on cash basis. So when someone is following cash basis of accounting, that will be clearly mentioned to us in the question. And if not clearly mentioned, at least by having a look at the question, you can easily say that cash system is being followed. Like if someone gives you receipt and payment account, that means cash system is being followed. So who maintains books of account on cash basis furnishes the following particulars of his income for the previous year ended on 31st March 2021. Receipt and payment account for the year ended 31st March 21. Cash balance, opening balance 3,60,000. Fees from clients. So the person is a tax consultant and he has received in 2020-21 he has received the fees of different years. 10,60,000 is the fees of current year itself, and in 1920 might be some people have not paid the fee during 1920, but now they are paying the fee in 2021 45,000, because this is the receipt and payment account of 2020-21. So that means some arrears of 1920 have been received in 2021 45,000 rupees. Presents from clients, it's like gift from clients 20,000. Clients, loan from clients 50,000. Loan from public provident fund. Now in PPF, as an individual we can deposit. So from PPF, on the basis that PPF the person has taken some loan 2 lakh rupees. Purchase of furniture on 17th July 2020 28,000 rupees. Furniture, car expense, office expense, salary to staff, office rent. Now all these are actually payment. All these are actual payments, actually paid expenses. Office rent because it is payment side. Income tax penalty, contribution to PPF, subscription towards a notified deposit scheme of a public sector company engaged in providing finance for residential houses 6,000. Balance carried down, that means closing balance of cash 17 sorry 10 lakh 86,000. Other information, depreciation on furniture is admissible at 10% per annum. Even if this line is not mentioned, we can easily say that on furniture always the depreciation in the block of asset is fixed at the rate of 10%. So even if in the examination you don't get this point, depreciation on furniture is admissible at 10%, it means it does not mean that you will not charge depreciation. You must know that as far as tangible assets are concerned, there are 3 blocks: building, furniture and machinery and plant. So furniture is always depreciated at 10%. The furniture is put to use on 17 July 20. That means on the same day when it was purchased, as you can see here, on the same day when it was purchased, it was put to use. 20% of car expenses are attributable towards use of car for personal purpose. That means whatever is the car expenditure, 80% I have used for official and 20% I have used for personal. Depreciation on car 135. Fees due but outstanding 4,50,000. Income from other sources 3,70,000. He purchased a computer for rupees 50,000 on 10th March 2020. It is, however, put to use on 3rd December 2020. Rate of depreciation 40%. Determine the total income and tax liability of Y for the assessment year 21-22, assuming he has not opted for optional taxation scheme under section 115 BAC. So let us start solving it now. Make sure that if we are preparing the accounts on cash basis, we will record the PGBP income when it is actually received, and we will record the PGBP expenses when these have been actually paid. Now what I did in my last question, in the last question I was having P&L account, directly I was having P&L account which I rectified. But in this question I don't have any P&L account, so there is no need to make any rectification. So directly I will prepare the correct P&L account. Correct means account as per the income tax department requirements of the law. Let me share with you my screen and then I will tell you that how we will proceed in this question when you don't have any P&L account. Now in the last question which we attempted in the last class, in that directly P&L account was given. So what I did, I corrected this P&L account. I corrected this P&L account. What do I mean by correct? That means I prepared it as per the provisions of IT Act. It doesn't mean that this P&L account was wrong. That was also correct, but that was not as per the provisions of IT Act. So I prepared it as per Income Tax Act provisions. So how I prepared it? Whatever net profit was given, I took simply net profit as it is, and I simply added back those expenses which are shown here, which might be valid as per the provisions of Companies Act, but not as per the provisions of IT Act. So I simply added those expenses. Similarly, I deducted those things which are on the credit side, which are not as per the provisions of IT Act. I deducted, I got the profit as per IT Act. That's it. This was my last task. So I started with my net profit as per Companies Act, and I did some adjustments. I got the profit as per IT Act. It's just like a reconciliation of cash and bank balance. That's it, which we must be doing in accountancy in our class 11th or 12th. This was the procedure which I followed in the last question. But now see, the same process I would have followed. The same process I would have followed had there been P&L account. In this question, had there been P&L account, I would have followed the same procedure. But what is actually happening in this question? There is no such thing like this in this question. What is actually happening in this question is cash account is given. So what should I do? From this cash account, by taking the help of account, I should first prepare P&L account as per Companies Act. And from this P&L account of Companies Act, I will prepare another P&L account as per what? Which is as per IT Act. What is the procedure of preparing another P&L account? Directly, I will start from net profit and I will simply start making the adjustments, add back something and less something. But this is very foolish to proceed in this way. It shows a foolish nature to proceed in this way. If you have cash account, why I should prepare first P&L account as per Companies Act? It's not required. Directly from this cash account, I should prepare what? P&L account as per the provisions of IT Act. That's it. Is the point clear? In the last question, I had P&L account as per Companies Act. So rather than preparing new P&L account as per IT Act, I took the help of that P&L account which was as per Companies Act and I simply made some adjustments. So I got the correct profit. In this question, there is no P&L account given as per Companies Act. We have cash account. So why should I prepare P&L account as per Companies Act? With the help of this cash account itself, I will directly prepare correct P&L account. Correct means as per the provisions of IT Act. Is this point clear or not? If yes, please raise your hands. Okay. Now, one more thing. Last question. In the last question, I started from net profit. I added something with the heading expenses disallowed. But in this question, such thing will not happen. I will not add anything which is disallowed. Why? Because there is no profit already available with me. So if I don't have this thing available with me, there is no question of adding something which is disallowed. There is no question of adding something which is disallowed because you don't have any profit available right now. So how will we proceed in this question? We will directly prepare P&L account. We will show the credit side sales and less expenses. That's it. So rather than adding something which is disallowed, I will simply show those things which are allowed. That's it. Here I was adding something which was disallowed because I had profit available. Now I will not add back something because there is nothing to add back. I will directly show only allowed sales or allowed credit side. I will directly show only allowed debit side expense. The difference is PGBP. Point clear or no? If yes, raise your hands. So let us start solving this numerical. You must be having the question with you, so you can read it from here. I have always told you that you should start or you should do PGBP questions in such a way that first you always look at the adjustments. So question is saying that I should compute total income. Let us compute total income. Always compute total income. So other information. First one, depreciation on furniture is admissible at 10% per annum. The furniture is put to use on 17th July 20. Okay. 20% car expenses for personal use. That means 80% official. Depreciation on car, fees due but outstanding, income from other sources. He purchased a computer. That's it. Now, first, so show credit side. So I'm not writing that I'm computing PGBP income. I'm writing that computation of total income. But PGBP comprises the major portion of this total income. So I should not spend my time in preparing two different columns for total income separate, for PGBP separate. When any one head covers around 90% of your question, so directly you can start from total income. So directly start from sales. So just check so we have read the adjustments and now just check the receipt side. Balance brought down is not the income. Fees from client received is an income. So you record it. It's my credit side going on. Fees from clients. I'm preparing in this format. If you want to prepare in T shape, you can also show just like this, fees from client. Credit side, and here you can show all the expenses. But I have written total income, so I am following this format. That credit side I will write first and then less debit side. So it's simple. Fees from clients 10 lakh 60 plus 45,000. Because it does not matter to which year it belongs. If it is received in my year, I will record it because I am following cash system of accounting. So it becomes 1060 plus 45, 11 lakh 5,000. Present from client. Present from client is nothing but also my income. Presents means gift. So technically it is my income. Add it. 20,000. Loan from client is not my income because it is a loan. I have to repay it back after some time. So I cannot say that loan is permanently with me. No, it is my outstanding. Present, my client will not take back. So present remains with me. So it's technically an income. Loan from client doesn't remain with you. So it's not your income. Leave it. Loan from public provident fund, that is also not my income. On my PPF, I got some loan. So it is a loan. It's not your income. This is the only income which I have. 11 lakh 25,000 less. So my credit side is over. Less expenses. Rather than concentrating on what is disallowed to be shown, since I'm computing the correct P&L account as per IT Act, I will write only that much expense which is allowed. So the way of attempting the question has become different. In the last question, I was adding those things which were disallowed. Here I will take only those things which are allowed because I'm here preparing direct P&L account. Expenses. Expenses.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, so the interest on the loan from the client and the loan from the PPF will be debited when it is paid actually.
No. Even if you pay it, it's not your regular expenditure. It has no relationship with your business. Loan from client has no relationship with your business. Even if you repay it, you will not show it anywhere. That was the amount which has come to me. Now I'm giving it back. Everything which I receive doesn't mean that it is an income. So department doesn't collect the tax on everything which you receive. They collect the tax only when you receive the income. Point clear on if you tomorrow gives me a loan of 3 lakh rupees just because you are my friend, it doesn't mean I will record 3 lakh anywhere because it was not my income.
Sir, but let's say I give you a loan of 3 lakh rupees, but you pay me back 3 lakh 30,000 as 10% interest. So with the
Yeah, so that
30,000 will
that
be
30,000 becomes relevant.
the expense, right?
That 30,000 becomes relevant because that becomes your expenditure and that become an income for some another person. But giving principal is not the income.
Got it,
Yes.
sir.
And sir, interest
Point
free.
clear, Sanjay?
Yes, sir. And if the loan is interest free?
So there is nothing we can say in that case. If loan is interest free, that means income tax department is not at all concerned about that.
Yes, sir.
But in
Okay.
that case, other provisions might apply. That why that is interest free, then it is a different direction. Like if employer gives you interest free loan, still government says, the act says that no, whatever is the SBI rate of interest, that would be chargeable to tax. Same is the case which happens if your friend gives interest free loan. Under other sources, then we apply those provisions. That how do we curb these transactions which are given as interest free. that is beyond your course of study, that how do we deal with those situations. Point clear?
Yes, sir. Please.
Okay, but in reality, yes, how do we deal with these things? These are written in the act. But for your level, if you think that something is income or expenditure, only then you record, otherwise that is of no use. So expenditure. Now when it comes to expenditure, I will directly start from working note. Sorry, not working note, additional information first. Depreciation on furniture is admissible at 10%. Even if this line is not mentioned, I would have charged depreciation at 10%. The furniture is put to use on 17 July 20. So how much is depreciation? Total value was 28,000. But 28,000 is not my expenditure, only depreciation is the expenditure. So I will write only 2,800. Point clear? Point clear?
Yes, sir.
But can't you notice something unusual here, or something which is conflicting?
Sir, presents.
Not present. Present is, there is no conflict. If tomorrow you say that presents are tax free, then every consultant will say that I have not received any fee, I have received only present. So present or fee is not the same, is of no doubt. In depreciation, there is a point that
Per annum?
I have charged per annum, there is no issue. Because as per section 32, either less than 180 or more than. The point is, what question you could have asked is that when you are preparing the cash system of accounting, why you are showing depreciation? Because it is a non-cash expenditure. Have you understood this point? If yes, please raise your hand. Have you understood this question? That when I'm preparing the cash system of accounting, why I'm showing this expenditure which is non-cash? Because depreciation is an expenditure which can be shown, which has to be shown if it is whether you are following cash system or mercantile system. That has no relationship for each and every expenditure. Some exceptions are there. So depreciation is one exception. Under section 32, if you are eligible to claim depreciation, you have to claim it. It does not matter what type of account or basis of accounting you are following. Just like if you remember section 43B, just like if you remember 43B, 43B expenses are allowed when you actually pay. When you actually paid these expenses, then only you can claim it. When you actually pay these, only then you claim it. So when I was following accrual system of accounting, still in that case, assessor cannot say that since assessor is following accrual system of accounting, why 43B is applicable to that person. That is an exception. Even if you are following cash accrual system of accounting, section 43B expenses needs to be actually paid. So some sections are exceptional sections where it does not matter what type of method of accounting you adopt. If these are given under the act, these expenses can be claimed. You can claim it irrespective of which method of accounting you are following. So depreciation is one such expenditure which has to be claimed irrespective of method of accounting. Point clear or not? If yes, please raise your hands. Next point. %20 of car expense is for personal. So how much is official? 80%. Since I'm directly preparing correct P&L account, I will record 80%. Had it been indirectly, had I started from net profit, I would have added back 20%. So that 80% is allowed. Since I'm preparing now correct P&L account as per the provisions of IT Act, I will directly deduct only 80%. Car expense. So if 20% personal, 80 is official. So write car expenses. एक 22,500. 98,000. And similarly, any other expenditure on car? Because if 20% car is for personal use, 80% is official. So there might be other expenses on car. On the debit side, there is no expenditure on car, but when you see additional information C point, depreciation on car is given 135. Here also, since 20% is for personal use, %80 is official. So 135 into 80%. So these things you must be having hold of, that how will we proceed systematically. When somewhere it is written that 20% car is personal, at the same time you must be having one thing in your mind, that check all the car expenses wherever these are given, and you take only 80% of remaining car expenses also. D point, fees due but outstanding. Can you tell me what is the meaning of this fees due but outstanding 450? Can you tell me the meaning? To which year it relates and what is actually happening with this fee? D point is fees due but outstanding 450. Can anyone explain what is this?
So it means that fees is accrued in this year, but since it is not received in the year, we won't show it in our balance income sheet.
So technically this fees is related to my year. Can you tell me how much is my total fees of this year? 450, which is not received, and
10,60,000.
1060, which I have received. Technically, if someone asks me that how much I have earned, I will not say that I have earned only 10,60,000. I will not say that I have earned only 4,50,000. Technically, in the previous year 2021, my total fees income is 15,10,000. That is another thing, that out of 15,10,000 I received 1060 right now, and remaining I will receive later on. But since I am following cash system, I am taking only 1060. Had I followed accrual basis of accounting, do you know how much I would have taken for my year? 15,10,000 had I followed accrual system of accounting. But since I am following cash system, I will not record this income. Income from other sources 3,70,000, that I will record later on. Let me first wind up entire PGBP. He purchased a computer for 50,000. I don't know whether you remember or not, but computer is covered under machinery and plant, where 40% is the rate of depreciation. If you remember section 32, computer is covered under machinery and plant, where 40% is the ROD. I purchased it on 10th March 20. It is, however, put to use on 3rd December 20, rate of depreciation 40%. So can you tell me how much depreciation I will deduct? Depreciation on computer. It is basically machinery and plant. It is covered under this category. Can you tell me how much is the depreciation?
So 40%.
20%.
Why 40 it is put to use for less than 180 days?
So half depreciation is only allowed if it's put to use less than 180 days, also if it's bought in the same year.
Yes, since this was purchased in 1920, but it is put to use in 2021, I will not charge half rate, even if it is used for less than 1 day, because half rate of depreciation is of no use when the date of put to use and date of acquisition year are different. So I will charge here full rate 20. And I don't know whether you remember or not, it is not so simple to charge like 50,000 into 40. What concept I applied in my mind, that I have prepared a block of machinery and plant 40%. I checked the WDV of this block on 1st April 2020. I found that there is no asset, nil. So I added actual cost of this asset, which is put to use in my year, 50,000. So total cost of the block became 50. It is known as total cost of the block. If someone asks you a question, what is the total cost of the block? It is opening WDV plus all the assets which have been acquired, less sale. I found that there is no asset of this percentage sold. So technically, I found that it is the closing WDV and this multiplied by 40. So when I have multiplied here directly 50 into 40%, I actually applied this concept, because in case of PGBP, depreciation is charged on block of asset concept base. I hope this point is also clear. Now all the additional information are over except income from other source. So let us now check payment side. Furniture over, expenses over, car, office expense. Yeah, it's allowed as per section 37 subsection 1. Office expenditure is allowed. 10,000. Salary to staff is allowed. No problem. 441. Office rent is allowed. No issue. 20,000. Income tax penalty. Can you tell me income tax penalty is allowed or no?
No, sir.
Why?
So section 40 clause A subclause 2 disallows any sort of expense related to income tax.
That only allows income tax paid. It's basically a penalty. So if you remember section 37 subsection 1, there were some conditions written at one point where it is not prohibited by law or something, or it's not an offense something. So penalty is basically because of my problem. Assessor should have followed the provisions of law. That means I have done something which is after due dates where I am being penalized. So such penalties are not allowed. So I will not write it here. Contribution to PPF. It is my personal saving. It's not business expenditure. I will not write it. Contribution towards a notified deposit scheme. It is my personal saving. So it's not allowed. That's it. This is my total business expenditure. How much? $699,800, and this is my PGBP, income under the head profits and gains of business or profession. 425,200. You check the total. Yes, it is coming right. 425,200. Now there is no salary given, there is no house property given, there is no capital gain given, but there is income from other source in additional information. It was my point number E, 3,70,000. So this is gross total income. How much? 370 plus 425,200. It is 795,200. After gross total income, then what comes? So after gross total income, what comes? Less deductions under section 80. So 80C is contribution to PPF 20,000. 80C itself. So actually it is 20,000 plus. If you remember the provisions of 80C, investment towards any deposit scheme of public sector company which is engaged in financing house, in providing houses, residential house, is eligible for 80C. So 20 plus 6. Total ATC becomes 26,000. So from 795 to 100, nothing is, yes, nothing is given out. 795 to 100 minus 26, it becomes 769 to 100. That's it, tax liability you can easily compute yourself. This is what the question of cash basis. With this, our PGBP is almost over, and whatever we have covered for our level, this much is more than sufficient. If you have any doubt in PGBP, you please ask me. Otherwise, I will start with capital gain. Just one section is left in capital gain. Please raise your hand if this question is clear. So we have covered both the concepts, if accrual system or cash system. So now the things are clear. You need to practice, of course. Income tax requires practice. It's like trigonometry in mathematics, where you need to practice it regularly. So in PGBP only once, then in PGBP nothing is left. Let us find up section 50 of capital gain. PGBP is over. PGBP over. So now forget PGBP and just try to think differently. Though it is not so easy to forget something which is in your mind. But let us suppose that PGBP is not there. Capital gain is going on. So if you remember capital gain, how we were computing capital gain? Do you remember how we were computing capital gain?
Sale proceeds less expenses, less cost of acquisition, less cost of improvement, indexed or not depending.
Yes. That means there was only one section, section 48. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
But there is another section also in capital gain, that is section number 50, which I have not yet discussed with you. In section 40, the things written are sale, less expense on sale, less cost of acquisition or indexed cost of acquisition, depends, less cost of improvement or indexed cost of improvement, depends. Difference is long term, short term, etc. etc. Section 50 is different. It doesn't go by sale, less expense on sale, cost of acquisition, improvement. No, it is having a different structure altogether. It is only for depreciable assets. It is only for depreciable assets. If I say depreciable asset, that means who can claim depreciation? As Naveen, I cannot claim any depreciation until unless I'm a businessman. Only businessman can claim depreciation, because now after completing section 32, which is used in PGBP, one thing is sure, that what is depreciable asset? Asset on which depreciation is allowed as per the provisions of Income Tax Act. Section 32 is the only section which tells you how to compute depreciation, and section 32 can only be claimed when someone is preparing P&L account. So someone must be a businessman to claim section 32. If you remember section 32, we apply block of asset concept. And how do we start? Opening WDV of the block of asset on first day of my previous year. So assuming my previous year is 2021, this is opening WDV plus cost of asset acquired during the previous year of the same rate. I get some total. Less what? Can you tell me less what? Net sale. That means gross sale minus expenses on sale. This value was WDV of the block. On 31/3/2021. On this value, I was computing depreciation. Please raise your hand if you remember this point. If you remember this structure, please raise your hand. Okay. Now here also you can see sale is taking place. So you haven't asked me a question, how do we compute capital gain in such circumstances? If any sale is happening, it means what? To be taxed under capital gain, can you tell me which is the section which we read to compute the tax, not compute the tax, to apply the provisions of capital gain? Can you tell me what is the charging section of capital gain if you remember? Section 45(1), where it says first thing there must be a capital asset. And what is capital asset? It is defined in section 2 clause 14. What is capital asset? Everything in this world is a capital asset except some items. So that means even depreciable asset is a capital asset. This is one thing which you must be having clarity on, which you must be having clarity. Depreciable asset is a capital asset. So if depreciable asset is a capital asset, when depreciable asset is sold, you have to compute capital gain. Because ownership is transferred during the previous year, asset is a capital asset, you have to compute capital gain. There is no choice, you have to compute it. Now, when I say that we need to compute capital gain, only one section comes in my mind, and that is section 50. So once I'm sure that yes, depreciable asset is a capital asset under section 2 clause 14. If I'm sure that section 45 subsection 1 is applicable when you sell the depreciable asset, the next question which I will ask to myself is how to compute capital gain when I transfer depreciable asset. For computation, there are only two sections for your level, or in fact there are only two sections, you can say 48 and 50. 48 is not applicable for you. For depreciable asset you have special section, and that is section 50. So whenever depreciable assets are sold, that means person must be a businessman, only then you can say that there is a depreciable asset. You have section 50 and you have to compute, you have to apply section 50, there is no choice. You have to apply it. Whenever there is a sale, you have to apply it. It can give me gain or loss, that is separate thing, but you have to apply it. Within section 50 there are two subsections. 50 subsection 1 and 50 subsection 2. And then let me tell me what these sections tell you. Opening WDV and actual cost, this value is known as total cost of the block of asset. Total cost of the block of asset. This is what the point is of the block of asset. This value is the total cost. So what 51 says, when net sale means this value is more than total cost of block. This value. Then you have to apply section 50 subsection 1 to compute capital gain. Can you tell me the gain will be positive or negative, or don't you think that it will always be positive? When my sale is more than the cost, it will always be positive, it cannot be negative. If your sale is more than this value, it is always what? Positive, because you have to apply only when sale is more than total cost. In reality, my sale can be less than total cost, but then you cannot apply 51. 51 says you can apply it only when your sale is more than total cost. It always gives you gain, and it is always short term. Income tax act says that on depreciable asset, always the gain will be treated as by default short-term capital gain. So one thing is sure that my section 50 subsection 1 will always give me short-term capital gain. It can never give me loss because you cannot apply it when your sale is less than the cost. So 51 always gives you gain, short-term capital gain. Let me assume an example. There is a block of plant and machinery, 15% rate. Suppose WDV of this block on 1st April 2020 is 10 lakh. And there are, for example, 5 machines in the block. I acquired 2 new. Actual cost of asset acquired. Suppose during the previous year, 3 lakh. So 2 new were acquired. Total 13 lakh. Less net sale. Suppose I sold 3. Suppose I sold 3 machines for rupees 20 lakh. It is the sale, and expenses on sale were 50,000. Expense on sale. So the sale is how much? How much is net sale? Can you tell me how much is net sale?
1950.
Yeah, but I cannot write 1950 because when I'm computing depreciation, my sale, I cannot show my WDV of the block as negative. So maximum I will write is 13 lakh. So what is my WDV of the block? On 31st March 2021, nil. How much is my depreciation? If my block itself is 0, my depreciation for the previous year 2021 is nil. So I have not yet applied capital gain. I was showing PGBP. Please raise your hand if this point is clear.
Sir, can you explain 19,50,000 point again?
Yes. What you are asking?
Third point, net sale.
Third point. What is third point?
Net sales.
Net sale means I sold 3 machines and the total sale value of 3 machines was 20 lakh and I incurred 50,000 as the expenditure on sale. So net sale become 19 lakh 50. But I cannot show 19 lakh 50 because WDV of the block cannot be negative. It can maximum be 0. I cannot say that it is my asset and it is having value. Had it been negative value, I would not have said that it is an asset to me. It would have been a liability then. So if it is an asset, maximum it can be having 0 value. So I cannot write 19 lakh 50 here. I have to write maximum this value here. Point clear or not?
Yes, sir.
Now this is PGBP going on. But in such questions, by default, I must know that capital gain also to be applied, and which capital gain and which section of capital gain, 50. Now whether 51 or 52, that is a separate thing. For the time being, I have shown you only 51. Now you tell me, can I apply section 51 here? Can I apply section 50 subsection 1 here?
Yes, sir.
Yes, because what 51 says, whenever your net sale is more than total cost of the block, and yes, I can see that how much is net sale. 19 lakh 50. So how you have computed net sale? It's basically gross sale minus expense on sale minus total cost. What is the total cost of block of asset?
13 lakh.
Yes, WDV of the block on 1/4/2020 plus actual cost of asset acquired so total 10 plus 3, it becomes 13 lakh. It always gives you short-term capital gain. Always 51 can never give you loss because you can apply 51 only when your sale is more than this cost. So it is must to apply. If any question comes where examiner can ask in any question that compute depreciation as well as capital gain. This is the way to compute depreciation as well as capital gain. In this single question, there are two heads to be followed. Please raise your hand if section 50 subsection 1 is clear. Now I will tell you 52. If 51 is clear, please raise your hands. Next point. Now what is section 50 subsection 2? What is section 50 subsection 2? It says what 52 says. What 52 says? When block of asset ceases to exist, जब ये खत्म हो जाएगा, when it will end, when block of asset ceases to exist on the last day of the previous year. Then apply 52. And it can give you short-term capital gain or short-term capital loss depending upon what is the figure. When your block ceases to exist, in my example, 5 assets were in the beginning, 2 newly purchased, total 7, 3 were sold. So still I was having 4 assets with me. So I cannot apply 52. I have to apply 51 because my sale is more than the total cost. When you sell all the assets in your block, then you have to give the net result. It can be gain or it can be loss. Same question. Now the same question, I will make only one change. Same question, one change. Same question, one change. Rather than selling all the assets, rather than selling 3 assets, suppose I sell that I sold all the 7 assets. So what change I have made? Change number 1. I sold all 7 assets. All value remains same. I sold all 7 assets. Can I apply section 50 subsection 1? Can I apply section 50 subsection 1? Can I apply section 50 subsection 1 here? Yes, I can apply. Because what 51 says, even if you sell all the assets, here you can apply both the sections. Answer will remain same, so you can write anything. What 51 says, that if sale is more than cost, so still sale is more than cost, I can compute my short-term capital gain. 51, answer will be 6,50,000. Can I apply 52? Yes, you can write 52 also, because 52 says block ceases to exist on the last day of the previous year. Yes, there is no asset in the block. So you can apply 52 also. Even if you apply 52, calculation remains same, only this will change. Because here also, calculation, the way of calculation is same, net sale minus cost. That is same, net sale minus cost, that is same, still 6,50,000. So when you sell all the asset in my example, it does not matter what you write. You can write 51 or 52. The value is 6,50,000 as short-term capital gain. Please raise your hand if the point is clear. Anything you can write. You can write 51 or 52, doesn't matter. Because ultimately the value never changes in this exam, in such exam. Next point. Now I am changing this question with a different language. I'm saying that, so it is change to. Change to. I sold all 7 assets, but now the value is 4 rupees 9 lakh only, and expenses on sale is 40,000. If this is a change, same block, opening value 10 lakh, newly acquired 3 lakh, total assets 7 lakh. But in the previous case, I was selling all the assets for this what 20 lakh, expense on sale were 19 lakh 50. Now I'm saying that I sold all the assets for 9 lakh only, and expense on sale is 40,000. Now my question to you is, can I apply 51? Can I apply 51 here?
No, sir.
No, why?
No, sir.
So because net sale consideration is less than the WDV.
Not WDV, total cost. Here net sale is equal to 8 lakh 60, and it is less than 13 lakh. I cannot apply 51 because to apply 51, my net sale should be more than total cost, which is not happening here. So I cannot apply. I cannot apply 51. Can I apply 52? I have to apply 52 because all the assets are sold. So I will apply 52. And when I will apply 52, can you tell me what is the net result? I will get short-term capital
Loss.
Net sale will be 860 minus opening WDV minus actual cost, or total, you can say total cost 13. So this is my loss. 51 never gives me loss. It will always give me short-term gain. But 52 can give me loss or gain depending upon what is the situation. So here it is having, I am having short-term capital loss, that is 440. Point clear or not? So I have shown you the applicability of 52 in both the situations as well as 51. Please raise your hand if this point is. And now let me give you a different question, and then you will see what will happen. This is the last question. After this, we will end this session. Now I will give you a question where another example, and just see what happens. as I required during the previous year. Same example. Only one change I will make now. Only 3 machines were sold. So this is my closing WDV. Can you tell me how much is the depreciation here? Suppose these assets were acquired and put to use, that means more than 180 days are there, so there is no half rate. There is no half rate. Okay, there is no half.
66,000.
So how you have computed depreciation? 4,40,000 multiplied by
15%.
15%. 66, and the block will go on. And the block will go on. I will say that WDV of the block on 1/4/2021, that will be closing WDV minus depreciation A minus B.
So there is a little mistake. WDV of the block of asset on 31st March 2021.
ये लो भैया 374. Now, can you tell me in this question how will you compute depreciation? Now see, everything is same. 10, 3, original 3 machine. I simply changed this value. Can you tell me how we will compute capital gain? As per
So we won't
51
compute.
or 52, which?
So we won't compute capital gain.
Why? Sale is
So
happening.
the net sale consideration is not more than the total cost of the block of assets. So 51 cannot be used. 50 clause
So
1.
net sale in my question is not more than total cost. So I can apply 51, yes, correct, because net sale is not more than total cost. I cannot apply 51, yes. Then 52.
So the block of asset is still existing. We can only apply that when block of asset ceases to exist.
So block of asset is also continuing. I cannot apply 52. So there is no capital gain, but sale is taking Is my voice coming now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so there was some electricity issue. So let us continue where we have left. Is this screen visible or not? I don't
No,
think
sir.
it is visible. Let me share it. So we were discussing this point. And what we were discussing is that in this example, I cannot apply 51 because my net sale of the block is not more than the total cost. I cannot apply 52 also because my block is still continuing. But don't you think it is wrong? So there should be a question mark. When sale is happening, just because some section doesn't allow me to compute capital gain, why I should not compute capital gain? Can you tell me the answer to this question? Just because one section is not allowing me to capital gain, in reality when sale is taking place, why I should not compute capital gain? Can you tell me the answer of this point?
So they can calculate capital gain for their own records. It just won't show in their income tax.
Why? So this is my question. Why? As an assessee, I will do close question with the department that why. I can say that had they allowed me, ultimately there is a loss to me. Had they allowed me to apply, had they allowed me to apply 51, though they cannot allow you to apply 51 because 51 says net sales should be more than cost. But I am arguing that why you are writing this point net sale is more than cost. I can argue that if block is not ceasing to exist, if block doesn't cease to exist, in remaining cases, you open 51 to everyone. Had they allowed me to apply 51, what I would have shown net sale 860 minus total cost, which is 13. I would have shown how much? Can you tell me? I would have shown how much? 440 as my short-term capital loss. I can argue that why you have written in 51 net sale is more than total cost. Why you don't write in 51 simply when block doesn't cease to exist? In all those cases, let us apply 51. I would have shown short-term capital cost, so there is loss to me. So my question to you is why I should suffer here? Can you tell me that why I should suffer just because of this one provision of Act 51? Don't you think that there is some problem in this provision? I hope the question is clear, but my question to you is, my cross question to you is, don't you think that there is a problem in this 51? Assessors should have been allowed to show short-term capital loss 4,40,000. Yes or no? If yes, please raise your hand.
Sir, but the total cost would have been of the entire block of asset.
Yes.
So, sir, but he sold only 3 machines, so how can he say that he should be allowed to deduct the entire block?
No, but in depreciable asset we don't go by single asset concept. So that is clear that we don't go by single asset concept.
Yes.
Now, is there anyone who thinks that yes, he is correctly disallowed this loss? That no, there is no such amendment needed. It is very well perfect that 51 doesn't write that apply me when block doesn't cease to exist. Can you think logically that no, Income Tax Act is correct? Assessors should not have been allowed 4,40,000. Why?
Sir, because he still has the asset of 4,40,000, which the assessor will use in the next years
To claim
this,
depreciation.
yes, sir.
Yes, this is the reason. Because if you allow this, in this situation, if you allow short-term capital loss, two benefits assessor will claim for the same thing. The same WDV, on this he has claimed depreciation in first year. On the remaining balance, he will again continue depreciation next year. On the remaining balance, he will go on claiming depreciation continuously. So ultimately, he is not losing 4,40,000. If you allow 4,40,000 here as well as here, so for the same value 4,40,000, there will be two benefits, double benefits. One under the head PGBP and one under the head capital gain. That is why it is correctly refused that in some cases of depreciable asset, even if you are doing sale, don't come and ask for capital gain. It is very well in the interest of the department, as well as it is logical also that when the block doesn't cease to exist, because when block ceases to exist, the game is over. Then there is no double benefit in future. But when block doesn't cease to exist, only sale should be more than total cost to compute the income under that capital gain. When sale is less than the total cost and block doesn't cease to exist, in that case, you cannot apply capital gain. So technically, you cannot show your income under the head capital gain. Point clear or not? If yes, please raise your hands. Okay, so that's all from my side for today. We have covered fully PGBP as well as capital gain, and tomorrow I will start as well as complete the topic PGBP. It will take 2 hours to wind up PGBP. Tomorrow I will wind up, sorry, not PGBP. Tomorrow I will wind up partnership firm also. That's all from my side, and goodbye for now.